Snow was already hitting hard when she banged on my door and shouted, "Your roof is not approved. Fix it now or face action." I looked past her shoulder at the dark sky and said, "Ma'am, this roof is stronger than it looks." She laughed like she owned the place and slapped a paper on my door, a fake HOA warning with a red stamp. "When the storm hits, don't cry to us," she said. I stayed quiet, because arguing with people like her is useless. Inside, my daughter was drawing near the window, and my wife whispered, "Something feels wrong." By night, the blizzard turned wild. Wind screamed like it was angry. Snow piled fast. Then my phone buzzed. An HOA group alert. Someone posted a video mocking my house, zooming on my roof with her voice saying, "This is what happens when people ignore rules." Minutes later, another alert came, not about my house, but about the clubhouse roof bending under the snow. Panic messages flooded the chat. Then silence. I stepped outside, snow cutting my face, and looked at my roof. Solid calm, untouched. Far away, a loud crack echoed through the storm. The clubhouse lights went out. My wife grabbed my arm and said softly, "They didn't listen to you." "Did they?" I pulled out my phone, opened the video I recorded weeks ago, and said one line under my breath that still gives chills. I warned them. Now the storm decides. Sirens cut through the storm before sunrise. Red and blue lights bounced off the snow, but they were not coming to help. They were coming to me. She stood behind two cops, arms crossed, smiling like she won. "That roof is unsafe," she said loud. "He ignored HOA orders and put everyone at risk." One cop looked at my house, then at me and said, "Sir, step outside." My daughter started crying behind the door. They tried to tow my truck first, said it was parked illegally during emergency. I watched the chain lock on my wheel and felt that sharp pain in the chest, the kind that feels unfair. I stayed calm. I always do. I asked one simple thing. "Can you write your badge number down for me?" The taller cop paused. The shorter one avoided my eyes. That's when the clubhouse manager ran through the snow yelling, "Stop!" The roof collapsed. "People are trapped inside." Everyone froze. She turned pale. Her voice cracked as she said, "That's not my fault." I slowly pulled my phone out and said, "I sent 3 emails. I warned about the weight load." She snapped back. "You don't know building safety." I looked at her, then at the cops, and said quietly, "Actually, I do." The wind howled again, and somewhere behind us, metal bent and broke. They rushed toward the clubhouse, but one of the cops stayed back and asked, "What do you mean you warned them?" I showed him my phone, emails, dates, photos of cracks I took weeks ago. Snow was shaking off my gloves as I scrolled. The cop's face changed. "These were sent before the storm," he said. She jumped in fast. "Anyone can fake emails." Her voice was loud, shaky. Then a firefighter ran back yelling, "Who knows the building layout?" I raised my hand without thinking. She snapped, "He has nothing to do with this." I said calmly, "I helped design it." Everyone went silent. Even the storm felt quieter. One firefighter stared at me and asked, "You serious?" I nodded. "Steel support is weak on the east side. People will be stuck there." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "He's lying," she said. That's when the firefighter's radio crackled. "East side collapsed, exactly like he said." The smile fell off her face. The cop who stayed back slowly looked at her and said, "Ma'am, step aside." As they ran to rescue people, I stood there shaking, not from cold, but from knowing what was coming next. My wife squeezed my hand and whispered, "Do you want me to make the call?" I nodded once. Across the snow-covered road, she was already dialing someone, her hands trembling, repeating one line over and over like a prayer. This was not supposed to happen. Within minutes, more police cars arrived. Real ones this time, not the kind she liked to control. A senior officer stepped out and walked straight to me. He didn't ask my name. He said, "Sir, are you the one who filed the structural risk report last month?" She turned fast. "What report?" I answered before she could speak. Yes, that was me. Her face went blank. "That report was ignored," she said, forcing a laugh. The officer looked at her and replied, "Ignored by the HOA, not by the city." He turned to me again. "You're the engineer who worked with the Army Corps, right?" I nodded once. No pride, no anger, just truth. My wife stayed quiet, watching everything. Then the twist hit her hard. The officer pulled out a folder and said, "The clubhouse land. It's not fully under HOA control." She stepped back. "That's impossible." He opened the map and pointed. "This section falls under emergency authority during disasters, and he has advisory rights." Her voice cracked. "He doesn't live here legally." I finally spoke, slow and clear. "I do, and I own the land my house sits on. HOA rules don't cover it." The air felt heavy. Snow kept falling, but nobody moved. One of the earlier cops whispered, "So the tow order—" The senior officer cut him off. "Was illegal." She started shouting, blaming paperwork, blaming old boards, blaming everyone but herself. Then a firefighter walked over and said, "We pulled 3 people out alive because of his directions." Silence again. The officer looked at her and said a line that made her knees weak. "You didn't just ignore a warning. You endangered lives." Her voice got loud, sharp, desperate. "He's manipulating you. He's been against the HOA from day one." The officer didn't even look at her. He was reading the report again. Then he asked me, "Did you record your interactions with her?" I didn't answer with words. I just opened a folder on my phone. Videos, clear sound. Her voice saying, "I don't care about safety. I care about control." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. One of the cops who tried to tow my truck stepped back slowly. The officer turned to him and said, "You followed her orders?" The cop swallowed. "She said she had authority." The officer replied cold. "She didn't." Then the ugly part came. She pointed at my daughter, still watching from the door, and said that child was playing near unsafe property. That was the moment I felt something break inside me. My wife stepped forward and said quietly, "Threatening a child during an active investigation." "Bold move." The officer looked at my wife. "Ma'am?" She showed her ID. His eyes widened just a little. She leaned in and said, calm and deadly, "I train federal response teams on crisis judgment." The officer nodded once. Snow kept falling. Sirens faded into the distance. And for the first time since the storm began, she looked around and realized no one was listening to her anymore. The officer turned back to her and said, "Ma'am, place your hands where I can see them." She laughed nervously. "You can't be serious." He didn't smile. Another officer stepped closer when she tried to back away. "You filed a false report, blocked emergency access, and tried to enforce rules you don't control," he said. Her voice went high. "I was protecting the community." I finally spoke again. "You ignored every warning because it didn't come from you." She spun toward me and shouted, "This is your fault!" The officer cut in fast. "No, this is on record." He held up my phone, now synced to their system. Videos, emails, timestamps, everything. Then came the twist she never saw coming. A man in a heavy coat walked over from the rescue area. He looked tired, angry, and familiar. "That's her," he said, pointing at her. "She threatened to fine me if I talked to the city." The officer asked, "Who are you?" The man replied, "HOA treasurer." Her legs almost gave out. "You said you handled that," she whispered to him. He shook his head. "You handled nothing." As they put the cuffs on her, she screamed, "You think you won?" I looked at my family, safe behind me, and answered in a calm voice that cut deeper than yelling. This was never a game. By the time the storm eased, the truth was everywhere. News vans parked near the broken clubhouse. Neighbors stood in silence, watching her sit in the back of the cruiser, still shaking, still trying to talk her way out. No one looked at her. Not anymore. The same people who once nodded at her rules now avoided her eyes. An officer walked over and handed me my truck keys. "Tow order canceled," he said. Then softer, "Thank you for staying calm." I looked at my house, my roof still strong under all that snow. My daughter ran into my arms and said, "Daddy, are we safe now?" I held her tight and said, "Yes, we always were." Later that day, a city official came by and said the HOA was under investigation. Emergency control was handed over. The clubhouse stayed closed. Lives were saved. Papers were signed. Quiet justice. No shouting. No revenge. Just facts winning. As the sun broke through the clouds, my wife stood beside me and whispered, "You didn't raise your voice once." Answered with the line people still repeat online, I didn't protect my home with anger. I protected it with truth. The storm took their power, but it reminded us of ours. That night, the snow stopped, but the noise online didn't. Clips spread fast. Her yelling, the fake notice, the moment she panicked. People shared one line again and again. He warned them. They laughed. By morning, the HOA board resigned. Emails came in saying the rules were frozen, fines canceled, control removed. The same system she used to scare people. Turned on her. A week later, I stood in my driveway, fixing nothing because nothing was broken. Neighbors waved. Some apologized. One veteran across the street saluted me and said, "You stood your ground." I didn't smile. I just nodded. My daughter placed her drawing on the fridge. Our house, snow around it, standing alone. The city report came out last. Clear words. Clear blame. She was charged. The clubhouse stayed closed. And one sentence at the end said everything. The warning was ignored due to abuse of authority. That evening, I looked at my roof as the sun went down and said the final line. Not loud, not proud, just true. I didn't fight the HOA. I let the truth bury them. Months later, winter was gone. But people still stopped their cars to look at that empty clubhouse. Grass grew around it like nature took it back. A new sign stood near the road. City property, under review. No HOA, no threats, just quiet. One afternoon, a letter came in the mail. Not from the HOA, from the city. It thanked me for preventing further loss of life. At the bottom was a small note, handwritten by the senior officer. "You reminded us why the law exists." I folded it and put it away. Some things are not for display. My daughter asked me, "Why did that lady hate us?" I thought for a moment and said, "She didn't hate us. She hated that she couldn't control us." My wife smiled and squeezed my hand. The wind moved through the trees, free and calm. As the sun set, I stood on my land. The same land she said wasn't mine, and felt something deep and heavy lift from my chest. I didn't win by force. I didn't shout. I didn't break a rule. I just stood my ground. And in this country, that's still enough. Winter returned quietly the next year, but the HOA never dared step near my property again. Neighbors who once whispered behind closed doors now waved with genuine smiles. Even the clubhouse, still boarded up, had a sense of peace about it. Its collapse, a permanent reminder that fake authority has limits. One morning, a journalist knocked at my door, camera in hand. "We're doing a piece on the blizzard disaster and the HOA. Controversy," she said. I nodded and let her in. She paused when she saw my roof, pristine under the sunlight, and asked, "You weren't worried?" I smiled faintly. I was prepared. And the truth always shows itself. Later that night, as my daughter slept and my wife brewed coffee, I looked out over the snow-free yard, thinking about the line that had started it all. She called the cops and screamed, "Arrest him!" But I was on my own land. The irony wasn't lost on me. She tried to control, threaten, and humiliate. But in the end, the land, the law, and simple honesty did the work. And that, I realized, was the real power. I whispered to the dark sky outside, letting the memory of the storm fade. Some storms destroy, some storms reveal. The HOA never ignored me again. The end. End the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing HOA stories.